I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name, the season of dreams.
So JUCK over with Menace to Sports.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. Hey, welcome in. It's JUCK. Appreciate you so much for joining me. We've had a whole lot of new traffic lately. If you're someone who's new to the show, if you like it, please hit that subscribe button for us. I won't be changing the name of the show anytime soon, though it almost happened. It almost happened because I did say about 2 weeks ago that if Jim Knowles ended up at Oklahoma, I would change the name of the show to JUCK on Sooners and hang an Oklahoma flag behind me. And while Ohio State fans had a rough day the other day losing Jim Knowles, it wasn't quite as bad as these guys' day.
Yes, some of you got notified about an emergency pod last night that proclaimed Jim Knowles is Oklahoma's next DC. Let me explain. In fact, I'll just read to you verbatim the statement that we made to members at OUinsider.com because there was a mistake that occurred. And so I would like to explain it to all of you for those that are out of the loop or that only saw that pod and haven't yet been brought up to speed on the explanation for it. So yes, number one, yes, there was a video. It was not supposed to see the light of day, at least not when it did. YouTube has a viewability loophole for unlisted video.
The Oklahoma guys, that's them explaining the video that went out proclaiming Jim Knowles was coming to Oklahoma, which they recorded ahead of time, assuming that was going to happen. That didn't happen, which is why I don't have to change the name. And I didn't make the deal that I would change it to JUCK on Nittany Lions, so it certainly won't be happening for that either. However, he did leave Ohio State, and some more things have come out about that. I normally, during the season, wouldn't get into this anymore because this is kind of gossipy, but it's the off season and it's kind of juicy, kind of funny, so I want to talk about it a little more. But I did a video on Sunday night about the Jim Knowles situation, and a whole lot of Buckeye fans were very angry about the way he handled it, which at first, that wasn't my initial reaction. And I think that in the past, I would have been very angry about it too. Just on a personal level, not coming to the celebration. This entire story just kind of hung over the celebration, and that feels pretty crappy. He had just signed an extension. He was the one that initiated contact with Penn State. And when you sign a contract last year, and the very next year you're going around having your agent reach out to other schools, it doesn't feel great. I think that I'm just a little calloused over when it comes to this kind of thing. When we look at Tony Alford, what he just did last year, I mean, it doesn't seem to coaches in general. And I think I feel differently about players, but coaches in general, it's such a transient profession that I just expect this kind of thing out of coaches. I don't ever expect loyalty out of coaches. So when it happens, I just chalk it up to that. That's what those guys do, man. It's their profession. It's a weird profession. We've heard, their stories of how many times they've moved over their lives, uprooting their family. Like, it's just what they do. It doesn't seem to faze them at all. But there is a counterpoint to how this all unfolded with Jim Knowles. And the counterpoint made by his fiance. Remember the one that the Oklahoma fans were getting real excited because she lives in Oklahoma, high school age kids, and didn't want to leave Oklahoma. The ironic thing here, Jim Knowles ends up further away from Oklahoma, now at Penn State. But she is not happy about the narrative that came out, and she had some things to say. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, I want to talk about Jim Knowles. Now, remember this dude, he had it made when it comes to what he does and doesn't want to do. He didn't recruit like the rest of the staff, and it's been pointed out that Chip Kelly was not at that celebration, and for good reason. Brady Smigel, one of his favorite quarterbacks in the class of 2026, has just decommitted from Florida State. Brady's dad tweeted a picture of Chip Kelly at their home on Saturday night. Chip doesn't like recruiting, but Chip gets out on his horse and goes and does it. Recruiting comes first. He wasn't at the celebration because of that. Jim Knowles, not that guy, never was. This is not the type of guy that builds relationships with players until they come in. And some of the comments were people worrying about guys transferring or recruits not wanting to come to Ohio State because Knowles left. There's three main reasons guys transfer or decommit. One is money. Two is when the head coach is leaving because the entire program resets. And 3 is their relationship with the position coach, which is the coach they spend 80% of their time with. Jim Knowles, not the point man for any of these recruits. Larry's recruiting the defensive line. Laurinaitis is recruiting the linebackers. Tim Walton recruiting the corners. Matt Guerrieri is recruiting the safeties. And if there's a guy in state, Knowles may travel with one of his guys. Like he's come with Laurinaitis up here to Akron to check out some of the guys at Hoban. But he's not running point on these guys. So I don't have any worry about any of that. This isn't going to affect player retention or recruiting one bit, in my opinion. But it does really suck losing a coach to a rival. That feels much more disrespectful than had he gone to Oklahoma, no doubt. Again, Tony Alfraud kind of calloused me over to this. And I'll debate you guys a little later. I know some of you get really mad when I call Penn State a rival, get very offended by it. It's nothing to be offended about, but I'll make my case at the end. So let's get to what the fiance said. She's not happy, and she wanted to clear the record to somebody. Now, this message, apparently, I think it was sent to somebody personally, and they put it out there for everybody to see. But here's what she had to say. So first off, they would not allow him to go to the celebration unless he signed their contract for $2.75. He asked to let him celebrate with his players, and they said no. If it's true, him not being there created more of a distraction than if he was there. And we're talking about a guy that's still under contract, according to Brett McMurphy, and we'll get to that tweet in a minute, still deliberating his options at the time. Why would he not be invited to the celebration? What if he says, yeah, I accept the deal the next day? Hey, Jim, why weren't you at the celebration? I was still deciding, and they told me not to come. That's a really bad look, and I'm just not so sure that I believe Ohio State said that. And I also think that Jim Knowles deserved to be there. And I also think that guys like Devin Brown, who were in the transfer portal going elsewhere, who stayed with the team through the run, all those guys contributed to this national championship team. They all should have been invited. So I believe he should have been invited. And if they told him not to, I don't really agree with that. But I don't know that I believe it. I don't know. It's a tough one. Let's move on. Oklahoma and Notre Dame offered $3 million, Penn State 3.1, and Ohio State 2.75. Slap in his face. They knew the other offers. So she's claiming disrespect because the other schools offered him $3 million and Ohio State only offered 2.75. 2.75. Now he was making 2.2 plus bonuses. That's a $500,000 raise from an extension that he just signed. Remember, he's under contract. When you got an employee under contract and he's getting offers for a lateral move, you assume that giving him a 20% raise and him getting you a little bit of a hometown discount, that's just assumed when it's a lateral move. Look, these guys are offering me, a 33% raise. Can we work something out? Sure. Ohio State comes back, offers him $500,000 more. That's not disrespect. That's generally how this thing goes. And generally in that situation, the guy's going to take it because he doesn't want to uproot and make a lateral move. Generally. There are some people who are going to be irritated that Ohio State didn't just outbid everybody on this, but we got to remember, just like when we talk about these players with the NIL, if my starting right guard is making $100,000 and there's a starting left guard that comes in from the transfer portal and I pay him $2, I better be prepared to pay $3 because I got to get him another $100,000. Right? Well, Chip Kelly's only making $2 million. So if I give Knowles $3, well, here comes Chip. I've actually raised that $2 million a year for that payroll. And Ohio State already has the highest paid assistant coach pool in the country. Just came out this weekend. Yeah. $300 million was the budget last year, or almost 270, going to be 300 this year, but they ran it at a $37 million deficit. So yeah, they got plenty of money to pay these guys, no doubt. But they're going to have to rework some things here. And you always want to be fiscally responsible. You don't just want to be throwing checks out. So sure, they're going to offer him 2.75, see if he accepts it. That was their initial offer to him. We don't know that they said, like, look, this is it. This is all you're getting. Don't come back. It's take it or leave it. We don't know that that's what happened. Knowles Camp didn't claim that's what happened. But rather than a lateral move, remember, people, listen, I talked to some people the other day when I called this a lateral move, but not really a lateral move. What I meant was Ohio State just won the national championship, not Penn State is a crap program and not on Ohio State's level. But if we're getting technical, Yes, it is a downgrade from Ohio State to Penn State. It was a downgrade in the 1920s, in the 2020s, and every decade in between, other than the 1980s. Ohio State has always been a superior program to Penn State. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings. It's just the truth. But back to Mrs. Knowles, soon to be. You can feel her irritation in this, and it reinforces to me the fact that this was very personal for Jim Knowles. He wasn't happy, and he wasn't interested in smoothing this over. But clearly Ryan Day was, because if he wasn't, he'd have told Bjork, look, if he wants to walk, he's under contract. Let him walk. He didn't. Bjork's not going to sign him and try to retain him if Day doesn't want to work with him, and Day doesn't want to smooth it over. So Day wanted to be the big boy, the adult in the room, and get past the personal issues. That seems pretty clear to me. We resume. And all this stuff about Larry Johnson and Day, Jim started playing his defense after the Oregon game, not LJ's. Now, LJ doesn't have a defense, but what she is implying there is what everybody's saying now. After the Oregon game, when Ryan Day came and said we were revamping the defense and how they played the defense, and the defense got way better for the rest of the season, there are a lot of people now acting as though Ryan Day went in and got involved in creating what they were going to do in the defensive meetings. Like, that's not what happened. Ryan Day took the cuffs off. Ryan Day said orders from headquarters. Sorry, Larry, this guy's calling the shots, and he's doing absolutely whatever he needs to do to make sure that never happens again. And kudos to Ryan Day for doing it. Yeah, you can point to, say that's a mistake for him to let it go on for 2.5 years before he put his foot down and said, that's it. The defensive line coach is not dictating what we do on defense, but he did it at that point, and he allowed Knowles to do what he needed to do, and Knowles got it done. Kudos to all of them. They did the right thing. But she's right there. That's not what's been floating around is not correct. Once he did not agree to the 2.75, it was 10:30 at night, and they told him he'd be locked out of the building at midnight. He even said, if you let me come and celebrate with the players, I'll just nod and smile and shake hands. They said no, it would take away from the celebration. Idiots. Not coming took away. It sounds callous, but if I offer you 2.75, you turn down the offer and tell me you're going to Penn State. She doesn't say that part. You turn down the offer and tell me you're going elsewhere. Get your stuff and leave, please. You're no longer employed here. I mean, I know it sounds bad. It's not incredibly uncommon. You don't work here anymore. You got to go. You just went to our rival. I'm sorry. It sounds callous. I get it. But if he'd have said, no, I don't accept the 2.75 and still wanted to negotiate, that'd be different. They wouldn't have done that if that was the case. So either they said, this is our final offer at 2.75, take it or leave it, and he said no, or he said, I don't accept the 2.75, I'm going to Penn State. One of those two things happened. In either case, get your stuff and leave. You're going to our rival. Sorry, that's just what it is. And finally, she says, I'm 99% sure they're the ones who broke the story because they said he told his players the night before that he was coming back, and that's not true. You go where you're wanted, period. I'm so angry about all this stuff out there about him. And I can understand why she'd be angry. That's someone she loves. I get it. But the truth is, it's clear by Ohio State's actions that Ryan Day was willing to smooth this over. The 2.75, not a disrespectful offer at all, standard operating procedure. And if they in fact said, this is our one and final offer, that's totally fair when you just gave him a raise and an extension that he signed last year, then came to you to strong arm you right before the national championship. If anything, I think Knowles was out of order in this situation here. And if it really was that bad for everybody involved, I don't blame him. Whatever it is, what it is. Thank you for your service. Mission accomplished. Ohio State is going to come out of this just fine. In fact, they'll come out of this great. And there's one more thing we got to get to. Now, my audience is a little older, so I want to explain to you real quick what a burner is if you're not familiar. That's an account that if you're on social media, you might want to have an account that says, hey, I'm JUCK. You might want to have another one that's totally anonymous, right? I'm not saying I got one of these. I surely don't. But let's just say I have my JUCK account and I make another one called Buckeyes Fan 2025. And on that account, I go around and search JUCK And if anybody mentions my name, I hop in there and say, hey, why would you say that about JUCK? I think his show's great. I think he's very level-headed. He's kind of handsome. Whatever I might want to say, I would do that with my burner account. Now, I've read to you the statement that Jim Knowles' fiance said from her Facebook. Today, a burner account was uncovered that my buddy DG posted. A lot of people can't stand DG. He's a fella on Twitter, a Buckeye fan, and he brings a lot of things to light that he doesn't think are great. And that's okay. You need DGs in this world because sometimes he's over the top. Sometimes he hits on something, right? He does. So DG brings this to light. Now, I don't know who dug it up originally. I'd love to give them credit, but I'm not sure. I tried to find out. I don't know. But somebody located this burner here that is 100% alleged to be Jim Knowles' fiance's burner and has since been, since it came to light, it's been shut down, OSUV 9749001. But here's what this burner had to say. For starters, that's impossible for you to read, I'm sure. So I'm just going to pull it up there and I'll read some of these things to you. 2 years, and the only thing this burner ever tweeted about in those 2 years, coincidentally, was Jim Knowles. That's an interesting thing for a young, looks to be in the profile picture, a 20-some-year-old girl to tweet about, following one person with one follower. So Jason Howard says, I know everyone says lay off Paula, that's Jim Knowles' sister, and this fiance, but why are these women always in the middle of his battles? It's almost like they want it. And our burner responds, this was a private message that she sent to someone she knew. Someone else says, he doesn't pay the buyout. Penn State would. Ha ha ha. She responds, they are idiots. Jim Knowles has fully activated his sister and fiance to run to his defense. She responds, get your stories straight. He was told he couldn't go to the celebration. He told his players he was leaving. OU and Notre Dame offered $3 million, Penn State 3.1, Ohio State 2.75. You go where you're wanted, period. And that pretty much sums it up. This is 100% her. Jim Knowles is a great coach, and in any other circumstance, I'd be happy for him, says JC. If it's true that he told his players he's coming back and then left, didn't celebrate with the team, man, that sucks. The burner responds, not true. He wasn't allowed to celebrate. OU and Notre Dame offered $3 million, Penn State 3.2, Ohio State 2.75. You go where you're wanted, period. Now, you go where you're wanted, period. You go where you are wanted, period. It's 100% her burner. And on she goes. On she goes. I mean, just nonstop. Wrong. Get your story straight, idiot. You all are just making up numbers. That was all on Gundy. This goes back to Oklahoma State. So, always hysterical when someone gets busted with a burner. Even more hysterical that Jim Knowles has a sister, Paula. And Paula, out there on Twitter forever, who really does come to her brother's defense, which I love. And I dig that too, if that's his fiance. But when you do it with a burner, it's just kind of embarrassing when you get busted. And she clearly got busted. So bottom line is Jim Knowles goes to Penn State. And I kind of like it, even though I can't stand that we won't be playing Penn State every year moving forward like we used to. But we do got him this year in November at the Shoe, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I love big-time regular season games. Now, unfortunately, the last Judas that we had come in, Tony Alfraud to the Shoe, for his return, did not work out the way we anticipated or wanted. But this year, we've got Chip Kelly's offense versus Jim Knowles' defense, and that's going to be fantastic because Jim Knowles is used to going after Chip Kelly with Ohio State's defensive players, and now he's got to come in with Penn State, which are good. Don't get me wrong, but they're not Ohio State good. Now, if you look back behind me, you're going to see some helmets, and I love helmets. Just so happens you can get these helmets too, and you can get them at our sponsor here at JUCK on Bucks, Green Gridiron. Mini helmets, replica helmets, real helmets, souped up helmets with the 3D bumpers. You know what the 3D bumpers are? These are called bumpers, so that it sticks out, rubber stuff, really cool stuff. And there's a link in the description of all my videos where you can get those. Get them for somebody as a gift. Everybody loves helmets. You just don't know until you sit in a room full of them. You'll love it. Now, Ohio State, back to the rivalry situation, and Penn State did not protect this rivalry. They both could have. They didn't. It could have been a game they played every year. Ohio State is 24-8 all time against Penn State. But I consider Penn State a rival, not the rival. Nothing will ever be the rival. There's only one. But I consider them a rival. And I wish Ohio State would have protected that game. As I said, they both had the opportunity to do it. Penn State didn't protect any rivalry. Ohio State protected Michigan. Michigan protected Ohio State and Michigan State. So you could have protected two. If you look back at Ohio State's last three national championships, 2002, you think of the Penn State game, Chris Gamble, the interception. 2014, national championship team, you think of Joey Bosa at Penn State, sacking their linemen into the quarterback. 2024, Penn State, you think of the goal line stand, then the Ohio State offensive line with the single best performance we've seen from an offensive line in one possession that in a long time, just grinding them to a bloody pulp, eating up 5 minutes to end the game. That was so awesome. I'm a college football fan, and I'm a college football fan because I love big time college football games, not just because I want the easiest route to the hardware in the playoffs. And I want to see as many big time Saturdays during the regular season as we can get. And those Penn State games, no matter that Ohio State usually comes out on top, they're always fun. They're always exciting. We always anticipate them. 80% of the time, it's a really good game, and we come out on top. That's fantastic. They're right next door. They're not a traditional blue blood, but they're in that next four after the 8 blue bloods. They're at number 12 in my rankings. And every single time you've been to the shoe against Penn State, they bring a different energy. There's a lot of hate. And if you've been to Happy Valley, which I've not for a Penn State-Ohio State game, I've heard a lot of stories. It's not a friendly place. So I do think they are a rival, even though they call themselves unrivaled, but they do it to sound like they're above everybody else. They would have absolutely protected that game with Ohio State if Ohio State would have let them. I think that this word rivalry can be applied to several different places. I think that Ohio State and Oregon have a budding rivalry. I think we have kind of a historic rivalry with USC. Now that I bring them up, it is a travesty that next year Ohio State and USC don't play. USC, if I'd have told you we're bringing in USC into the Big Ten, wouldn't you imagine if you were the guy running the show that you would feature a game between Ohio State and USC in the first 2 years of that? Somehow this didn't happen, and that's just ridiculous. But last year when I started this show, one of the things when I first started that was going around, one of the big topics on shows like this on Twitter amongst Buckeye fans was, what happens if Ryan Day loses the game in 2024? Will he be fired? Should he be fired? My answer to that at the time was no. But if you'd asked me 2 months prior, I would have said yes. The reason my answer was no at that time is because Ryan Day had changed my mind. We saw Ryan Day head into that offseason and make a lot of changes, gave up play calling, took on the CEO role, got a little more cutthroat when it comes to player acquisition. The example I used at the time was bringing in Julian Sayin, who he had tried to go after before bringing in Aaron Nolan. Julian Sayin was locked in with Alabama. Then he went after Aaron Nolan, got Aaron Nolan in the class. Now, it was tough for him to bring in Julian Sayin. Two days straight of meetings at the Woody about whether or not he should do it. And he didn't want to do it because he told Aaron Nolan, you'll be the only quarterback in the class. But he did it anyway because he said he knew it would help the team. And that was a cutthroat move that I don't think he would have made before that period. I don't think he would have given up plays before that period, as we know. And it was just more of this shift into this CEO role that, quite frankly, we've now seen pay dividends. One of the contributing factors that got his team over the hump, getting to that final goal of a national championship. But where he was at that point was so close. He was so close to getting there. And a lot of times when you see coaches in that position, most times they say, we're so close. All we need to do is keep chopping wood. But he didn't do that. He evaluated his program. He found a couple potential spots where he could potentially improve. And he took the risk, took the leap, and he did it, even though it was uncomfortable. And when he did that, my thinking was, I've got to give him at least 2 years of buy-in now that he's made these changes, because you don't expect changes like that, a change that big, giving up play calling, converting into this CEO role. You don't expect that to work perfectly year one. So I gave him 2 years. And that was my argument to that conversation that we had in the offseason. One of the biggest ways that I think we saw this CEO role, Ryan Day moving into a kind of a different style of manager, is this year post Oregon in Autzen. 32-31, Buckeyes lose. Defense doesn't look good. We've talked about it. He knew he made a mistake a while ago with the situation and the way this was set up, that the defensive line coach, Larry Johnson, had too much sway on what could or could not happen in the defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles' system. And I understand how he got himself in that situation, though he never should have been there. But why did he get himself in that situation? If you put yourself in Ryan Day's shoes, you got a legendary defensive line coach, the guy widely considered as the greatest of all time. He has been there longer than you. He's not incredibly easy to work with. So if you can get things on defense while still allowing him to do his thing, staying in a good mood, you don't got to rock the boat, and everyone's playing good and the defense is getting good results, why would you rock the boat? The defensive coordinator may not be able to do everything he likes to do, but everybody's happy. We're winning games and the defense is playing great. And that was the case a lot of the time until that Oregon game. And he took that as his opportunity to rock the boat and correct this system that he had set up here. Give Jim Knowles full control and tell him he wants an aggressive defense. He wants pressure on the quarterback. He wants his guys lined up when the ball's snapped. Do what you need to do and fix it. And Larry and everybody else can hear this now. What he says goes. I don't want to hear another word about it. I don't ever want to see that, what we just saw, again, not in my program. That's what he did. And he fixed the issue. Didn't care who got their feelings hurt. Didn't care who got angry. He's trying to win a national championship. And this is his program. And that right there, managing people, man, managing people, managing egos. This is a very under-discussed thing when we talk about best coaches. I am not someone who liked to listen to anybody give the excuse that Ryan Day was only in his 6th year as a head coach. If you are in sales and I ask you, are you new to sales and you're in your 6th year, are you going to tell me you're new? No, absolutely not. You're a vet. If you've been a head coach at Ohio State, the highest of the high, for 6 years, you're not a new coach. But it does take a long time to learn the proper managing techniques when you're managing people. And it's difficult. You got a lot of personalities. Everybody thinks their way's the best, particularly, and you've all worked with guys that are older who have done great things in their career. They're pretty set in their ways usually. They don't like change, and they certainly don't like somebody else coming in and telling them what they're doing is wrong, or in this case, pulling one of their guys off the field that they recruited, that they said, we play 4 down linemen. That's all we do. And you're one of my guys. You win a starting spot for me. You're going to be in every play. These are all part of the things that Ryan Day had to deal with. And Ryan Day acquiescing to that in the beginning, I totally understand. But this is part of the process that he's gone through. And I think what he did right there was an opportunity he had been waiting for to correct this. And he seized it. And it propelled that defense and this team to a national championship. All changes that he made this year that I don't think we would have seen in the first 5 years. So to that aspect, he's still learning and growing and evolving as a coach for sure. But he isn't new. The 5-day period from the end of the national championship until the players could no longer enter the transfer portal, pretty stressful time. And these coaches had to deal with this immediately after winning the national championship, which I felt very bad about, though I felt worse for Notre Dame, who had to deal with this despite losing the national championship. So Ohio State would much rather be in their position than Notre Dame's. And boy, did they do a whole lot better than Notre Dame did. They only lost 2 guys in Hero Kanu and Calvin Simpson Hunt. Now, Hero Canoe and Calvin Simpson Hunt, along with Mitchell Melton and Gabe Powers, the 4 guys that they lost in the transfer portal that were quality guys who could have really helped you with depth. Mitchell Melton played quite a bit this year. Calvin Simpson Hunt, who knows, could have eventually become a starter at some point. Hero was in your rotation this year. And Gabe Powers, that's a quality backup linebacker. So losing those guys sucked. But only losing Calvin Simpson Hunt and Hero Canoe in that 5-day period was unbelievable. Being able to retain Carnell. And I don't know if you knew this, but I just found this out. Apparently, other teams, not just Oregon and Texas, were all over the Carnell Tate thing. This is from a Penn State publication. Portal update. OSU wide receiver won't transfer, thus won't go to Penn State. Here's Frank from Tennessee.
How we doing on this Saturday, Big Orange Nation? This is Frank, House of Orange, coming at you. The big topic around Tennessee football, really, ever since the national championship game ended, has been Carnell Tate. Would Carnell Tate enter the portal? If so, would Tennessee get involved with him?
So that was the big topic around Tennessee football. I had no idea. But what they were able to do, retaining those guys, retaining Jermaine Matthews, keeping IGB out of the NFL, just a phenomenal job. I definitely expected we were going to have some more bombs drop. So getting out of that, now we're not all the way out of the weeds, but getting out of that for as we head into the spring, it's excellent. When we look at this secondary next year, yes, the defense is going to start some younger guys all around the defense. But this secondary with IGB, a 2nd-round draft pick maybe this year, who I get it, frustrates the heck out of everybody at times, but is an incredibly effective corner who's really good in run support. Him opposite Jermaine Matthews, who was the best cover guy on the team. Caleb Downs at safety, and I think a future star in the making, Jalen McClain next to him, will win that job over Malik Hartford. Lorenzo Styles, maybe a little Bryce West at the nickel. That is a really good secondary. I think most teams would trade for that secondary. And we're not even counting Devin Sanchez, who is sure to get a whole lot of run in his freshman year. So these dudes are dogs, man. Like this defense is going to be good. Can't wait to see who's going to be coaching them, but they're going to be really good. And what Ryan Day and the crew and the money support, and by the way, guys, what they were able to do is fantastic. But what we need to make sure we do is not what Georgia did. After Georgia's 2 national championships in a row, last year, they had their NIL just kind of tumbled off a cliff. They had no donations, and it was because of malaise. They were all, they were fat and happy, so to speak. And it was a big issue. So if you are someone who donates to the Ohio State NIL and you can afford to do so, and it makes you happy to see the Buckeyes win, don't cut off your monthlies. Just remember that. Like, don't do it because you're fat and happy. Obviously, we all are in different positions. But if you're someone who does do it, they still need it. They definitely still need it. And it's something that I will continue to do. And I think it's in a way, I like the way it feels. It's always made me feel more connected. Like, yeah, you have all this stake your whole life being a Buckeye fan. But when you're actually scratching a check, not figuratively scratching a check, every month that's going to those players, it just, I don't know, man. Something about it feels good to me. So if you're a monthly donor and you can afford it, don't get fat and happy like they did in Georgia. Don't get fat and happy. Get fat and happy, but don't forget everybody else got to get fat and happy too. So Justin Hill, if you guys have been watching for any amount of time, this was maybe my favorite prospect in the state of Ohio in a couple of years. I think he was very underrated as the 55th player in the country, which is an amazing rating. I think if he was from Georgia, he'd have been a 5-star top 10 player in the country. His film is insane, from Winton Woods, and he is the ideal jack. The ideal jack. Obviously, they weren't running the jack. They couldn't show him the jack on film. And they went in, a cavalcade of Buckeye coaches. Jim Knowles, Tim Walton was there. James Laurinaitis was there. Larry Johnson was there. And they went in to Winton Woods down in Cincinnati, Jermaine Matthews High School. He's close with Jermaine too. And the Buckeyes were winning this thing all the way up till, and I did it live, his commitment. And he chose Alabama. Now, Alabama plays a similar position called the Wolf in their defense to the Jack. Here's what Justin Hill had to say.
So, like, they got that jack position. I don't know if y'all know a lot about that. It's similar to the Wolf. It's a move around backer, rushing a lot. And that's what I wanted to do. And I'm like, oh, yeah, bet. Like, and that's what I got brung into. I was getting recruited my sophomore year when I got my offer. Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, brought me in the room and was showing me how he wants me to be this. And I was all for it, because that's what I wanted to do. And really just the lack of them playing it drew me away from it, because I'm like, all right, what if it's not being played when I get there, and then I'm going to play another position?
Right. Yeah. That may not be using your versatility.
100%.
So for those who don't know, the Jack Wolf position, right? That's a versatile, player, athlete. Ends can play down middle linebacker, come downhill, fill the gap, play the edge in the 5 and the 9 technique, rush the passer, and just be able to drop back into zone and cover man and in zone against a running back and tight end. So just really highlight your versatility.
And what I wanted to do was, one of my main points was just I wanted to be valuable to all 32 teams.
Right.
And that was like, I feel like I could do that at that type of position.
And he can, and he will be valuable to all 32 teams. The dude is going to be a fantastic football player in college. And he's now playing at Alabama, not at Ohio State, because Jim Knowles couldn't show him on tape that they were playing that. And that's the problem. That's the problem. You lose dudes like this, a kid from Ohio, Buckeye fan all his life.
Man, O State, it's a great place. Like, I grew up, I'm an O State fan. Like, I'm still going to wish them the best when they not playing us.
Right. That's our guy. That's our guy, and he's gone because we couldn't put this on film. And it's all about versatility. It's all about running multiple fronts. No, I'm not some big advocate for the Jack. It's just about multiplicity, doing everything you can to confuse the defense. And when you've got a veteran team, like we just had the perfect team that could have done anything they wanted because they're all so smart and understand everything else. But this situation has now been corrected. And I couldn't be happier. And that is props to Ryan Day. You get yourself in a situation, you get yourself out of it. And he did. And we're seeing the maturation and the wisdom in how you manage people, which is tough if you've never done it. And he hadn't done it when he started at Ohio State. Until you're a head coach, or until you run a business, or until you just don't understand what it's like to manage a pile of people. It's difficult. You need to learn a lot of things to do it right. And it seems to me like he is on top of things. So when it comes to hiring a new defensive coordinator, I have absolutely no worries about it. When it comes to terminating a coach that needs terminated, I got no worries about it. I think from now on, we're going to just continue to see him get better and better at managing people. And that's a great thing. Anyway, that's our show today, guys. I appreciate you all so much. Thanks for chopping it up with me, and I'll talk to you soon. Juck on Bucks out. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck? Who is Juck?
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks.
Juck. 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 Juck on Bucks.
My guy Juck. Juck on Bucks. My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juck on Bucks. Okay.
Juck is junk.
The Juck eyes.
The Juck eyes.
Juck on Bucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.
Who knows how long Knowles is going to stay here? Maybe he leaves. Maybe Guerreri's the guy that keeps that rolling with that system.